Hey, what's up, guys? How y'all doing today? Welcome, 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 welcome. We are in Diddy's last days. What's up, everybody? Y'all, I want to give a shout out to Diddy's legal team for giving the prosecution the evidence they needed to make sure this mofo stays in jail for a long time. Now, listen. Admittedly, nothing in this case has gone as I expected, as I prayed for, as I hoped. However, the prosecution is right. And we got the full legal documents. We're going through all that. We also have the victims, the witness statements from Deontay Nash. Cassie's parents wrote in a judge uh, to Cassie's parents both wrote into Judge Aaron. Deontay Nash wrote into Judge Aaron. Cassie wrote into Judge Aaron. I still giggle when I think of Young Miami. Dear Judge, Your Honor, Judge, that's a good man. See, this is why your career look like the way it does, because you don't know a good man when you see one, or maybe you just never met one. I don't know. In any case, right? Um, uh, the whole world is coming down on Diddy, and baby, we love to see it. Okay. But at the end of the day, the one thing everybody's looking for is the government wants 135, right? They want 135 months minimum. Minimum. They're suggesting a maximum, but they're saying, but listen, if you don't want us to appeal the case and you don't want it to be a problem, we'll be fine with 135 months. That's how serious they are. The 11 years was on the downward of what they went. They also brought up case law with Diddy's attorneys being like, what are you talking about? Diddy's attorneys, they brought up case law being like, sorry, guys, first day, new. For everybody complaining about my sound, enjoy this microphone because it'll be grand opening, grand closing. I'm going back to talking through a sock covered in a potato with two pieces of string and a paper cup to the side for my for my audio. Anyway, you guys, there's a lot to cover, okay? Diddy's team is pretty much responsible for this because part of the reason they had to get him off on from the jury, yeah, it's a modern love story. Okay, he did it, but who hasn't, right? They are now using all those words against them. Now, I do want to say one thing before we get into the documents, because when I say they destroyed Diddy, they destroyed Diddy. We're also going to read all the statements from Deontay, Cassie's mom, everybody, and dad, everybody that went in on Diddy to remind us what it was. But first, those of you that are new to my channel, hi, my name is Tisa, and Gucci think I love them. Listen, my name is Tisa, right? And I just, for those of you guys that don't know me, I'm about to be so sickening right now because I want to say to all the people saying I was lying, all the people taking advantage of the fact that they wasn't in the courtroom half the time, they didn't read the transcripts, were wondering if they can read, all the people that were putting out a weird narrative about what was going on in the Diddy case, and all the people, hold on really quick, you guys, sorry, 1 second. One. Okay, I'm back. All right. sorry. That was my employer, the federal government. They were like, what are you doing? You are not getting your year-end bonus if you don't say A, B, and C. But I do want to say this, right? And this is a shout out to everybody that lied and everybody that actually misled. Okay. Yeah, what they got to say now? Everybody said I was making up mess. Everybody on the dirty Diddy crew and their horrible PR. I don't give a damn what y'all say. His PR was garbage. The only reason they won is because good old fashioned misogyny. Women are only victims when we are gone. And even then, they bring up any trash they can about you. Did you cheat on your high school boyfriend? Were you this, for that? You have to be a saint and a half for anybody to have sympathy for a woman that's been done over. Now, why do I bring this up? Because there was so much misinformation spread about what evidence was presented in court, what was talked about in court, what they did. When I was shocked when the Diddy verdict came out, because I was sitting in the courtroom every day listening to the evidence. I was shocked with what they came up. Diddy's team, and again, maybe they don't work for Diddy. Maybe they just bootlickers. Maybe they just like, I don't know. They spent their whole lives hating outside the club, and now they finally think they're gonna get in, even though the shock is gonna be on them because Diddy don't hang out with like low class people like them. He's pure glamour. But my whole point of the matter is they tried to say that half the stuff, actually everything that I reported, that the witnesses said, that the prosecution said, that Diddy admitted to, they tried to paint it like I was out here making up stuff for clicks and views, which, by the way, my sunny personality gets me clicks and views, baby. I can talk about the soup I burned last night. Yes, I did burn some ramen on the stove. I can talk about the oodles and noodles I burnt last night. I don't need to do that. But the whole point of the matter is now in the sentencing memos, they have all been exposed as liars. They've all been exposed as ops. And they have all been exposed. They have all been exposed as, I hope they were on Diddy payroll, but judging by the way their lives look, I don't know. They might have been doing it for free. Anyway, y'all, let's actually get into this so we can get into the get down. First, let's take a look at this sentencing memo. Let me pull this up. But you guys, give yourself a round of applause that you held against the misinformation. You held against the violence. You held against just the dumbness, the sheer stupidity of Diddy's team, and stood for what was right, because the proof is in the pre-sentencing report and the proof is in what the prosecutor said. And I dare them to say that the federal government is lying, because everything the federal government is saying and the pre-sentencing report is saying is based off of what was in the trial and what actually happened. Okay, so let's get into this. We have, of course, let's see. No. Yep. Hi. Okay. Let's get into this. Shall we? Let me just move myself to the left and let's get into this document. It's been a long time since we had a read along, sing along. This sing along is called Diddy is Going to Hell. I'll start it off. Me, 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 me. There we go. In the tone of you going to hell. I'm sorry, jail. All right. Now, for those of you guys that need this chopped up into little bits, it's fine. I'll chop this live up. But let me just take you over my notes as to what was actually said and submitted. Now, Cassandra, Cassie, she wrote a letter to Judge Aaron. Jane wrote a impact statement. Former employees, okay, also wrote statements in, and other victims and associates letters describing PTSD, flashbacks, and lifelong trauma from Diddy's abuse. Now, here's the thing. Diddy's team, this was a direct clapback from the memo that Diddy's team just submitted a couple of days ago. Here's the defense's argument. They said that the MDC jail conditions are harsh. There's overcrowding, there's violence, there's poor health care. Mind you, Diddy actually said, it doesn't matter. We'll get to that later. The prosecutor's response said this: the MDC is difficult for everyone, not a reason for special treatment. Diddy already receives privileges. He has a private attorney visits, personal funds. Prison hardship doesn't outweigh the gravity of his crimes. Now, they said that there's psychiatric evaluations that show mental health issues. Okay. This is what the defense is saying. So, because they said the psychological evaluation shows that Diddy might have mental health issues, they argue that Diddy should have reduced culpability. Reduced culpability means when the pre sentencing report comes, they give you a point, right? Like if they're pre sentencing, like, Tisa, are you a woman? Yeah, that's 1 point. Are you black? Yeah, that's 1 point. Do you like talking trash? Yes, that's 3 points. They add up each point. But the mental health will reduce culpability, being like, okay, well, maybe you do talk trash, but you have a mental issue, so we'll take 1 point off, right? It's a numbers game. The prosecutor directly responded. We're going to get into the memo. I'm just giving y'all the overview. The prosecutor directly responded that evaluations are unreliable and self serving. There's no evidence of mental illness driving this abuse. Diddy is a calculated, manipulative, and fully responsible for his choices. The defense countered with, well, he has personal and family circumstances, his children, philanthropy, music, legacy, community ties. I do want to say one thing. Where is Diddy's philanthropy that they speak up? Because I have not heard one person say that he actually gave them a scholarship or did anything good to them. I think the philanthropy is all smoke and mirrors. All right. The prosecution hit back and said, this does not excuse decades of violence. He came from privilege. True. He had no history of childhood abuse. I mean, unless somebody wants to clear the record, I have my suspicions because when I saw Diddy's roster that he was paying for, and they looked like they had all been hit twice with the doogly, right? I said, that got to be abuse because they all kind of look alike. They're all solid fives that Diddy saw as sevens, but some people see them as fours. I just thought there's some trauma and abuse there because, mm, 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 right? I said, you paying for that? I mean, I guess the ones that look like Calvin Klein models. I guess the rate was too high. Diddy was only paying how much an hour? Anyway, right? They're saying that he has no history of childhood abuse. He used his wealth and fame to facilitate crimes. Get this. The defense says, but a 14-month sentence is enough. It's equivalent to time served plus short extension. The prosecution hit back and said this is laughably low compared to similar Mann Act cases. This will create disparities and signal leniency for celebrities. Prosecutors say that 11 to 20 years is 100% appropriate. The defense then argued collateral consequences, saying the reputation was destroyed, business collapse, legacy ruined. To which, no, Emily Wilson was sitting like, and that sounds like a you problem. They said these are the natural results of his own actions. Courts punish the crime, not protect reputations. His downfall is not a mitigating factor. They also speak to cooperation, acceptance of responsibility, and claims he admitted domestic violence at trial. I don't remember him admitting domestic violence. Do you? The courts hit back and said he admitted only to what was undeniable on video, but still blames victims and minimizes it. True acceptance means guilty plea plus contrition, which he has not shown. The prosecution is ridiculous. Baby, we want a guilty plea. We want a guilty plea. And you haven't shown that. And they say that the defense says, well, Diddy's a 0 point offender status. It's his first federal conviction and no prior record. The prosecution hit back and said, baby, this doesn't apply. Pattern of abuse is extensive. Record shows obstructions, threats, and long-term criminal argument. The prosecution is basically saying everything you're arguing right now is an excuse. Diddy is wealthy, powerful, unrepentant, and most of all, dangerous. Therefore, only a long sentence with the maximum fines fit. Now, when I heard fines, I said, take every penny. But the maximum fine is only $250,000 per count. So the maximum fine he can get is $500,000. I mean, I guess that's baby loves Christmas. Let me stop joking. Baby loves a cute baby. I actually do feel sorry for his kids. I feel sorry for his mom. I feel sorry for his whole bloodline. I really do. The kids look like good kids. They were, I mean, some of them are not kids. The daughters are young. Everybody else is grown. They're in their 30s, right? The kids look like good, well educated kids whose family has money and influence. But the thing with that is, and even his mom, it was so sad when Janice Combs wrote a letter saying that she's 85 and she wants to make sure she gets to see her son. And baby love, she is so cute, right? Dana Tran seems really nice. Sarah seems nice. Actually, all the women Diddy kept around him, including Cassie, were really nice and sweet, right? I feel like they have a lot of empathy and he exploits that. But then I was like, the other part of me is like, F that. Because why? I don't know what it is that men, especially, you, you, you did all this BS. You didn't care about when you was clocking Jane in her head, you didn't care about your future, your kids, your mom, nothing like that. When you were doing all that stuff to Cassie, when you were doing that stuff to Deontay, when you're doing that stuff to Capricorn Clark, when you were doing all that stuff to all, you did not care. So why, when it's time for you to be held accountable for the dumb things you do, why on earth should I care about what's going on? This was a choice you decided to make. This was a choice you wanted to make. Why in God's green earth do I need to worry about that? And that's what really is making me so mad. It makes no mistakes. It makes no sense. The way that I, hold on, guys. Hold on. I get a text message. Oh, good. Thank you, B. How are you doing? I know I've been MIA, but hello. Listen, we're gonna do a quick poll. But while I'm setting up the poll, because I'm gonna get a poll on. The poll is, what do you think he's going to get? Yes, that's the thing. Whose idea was this to do a poll? Sickly ignition. We're going to do a poll on what people think he's going to get. Okay, we're going to do a poll. But it makes me mad that just like certain men, women too, but you really don't see it because women, we usually have to take accountability of our actions. But it makes me so sick that we now have to not only take the brunt of your impact on society, which is poisonous, but we now have to manage your emotions and your legacy and your this and how you can feel. Who cares? You weren't thinking about your family. So why do I have to think about your family? I really honestly want to know. Anyway, let's get into this. All right. Let's do a poll. Okay, let's do a poll. Uh, let's see. Start a poll. Let's see. Do you think he will Diddy? Hold on. Do you think, oh my God. Do you think Diddy? Hey, Dr. Pay Nestor, thank you for being a tattletale for 15 months. What's up, girl? Do you think Diddy will get 14? 14. No. Do you think Diddy will get over 5 years? This is the first poll. Do you think Diddy will get over 5 years? Yes, no, or I think he's walking, or I think he'll get 10 years. You guys have to brave with me. I'm a talker, not a typer. All right. All right, we just started the poll. Okay, we'll look at the results of the poll in 1 second. And then let me just get through this and then we're going to take questions, okay? All right. So first of all, getting into this, baby, this was a 189 document. They are not playing. First, they get the procedural background, then the federal investigation and charges, the pre-trial bail hearings, defendant's detention and bail renewal, trial, Then they go into the offense conduct. The defendant's relationship The defendant's relationship with Cassie, defendant's relationship with Jane. The defendant used his vast resources to perpetrate the offensive conduct. The defendant abused others. The defendant engaged in other misconduct. The sentencing guidelines, the government's guidelines calculations, guideline disputes, they give the applicable law. Calculating the guideline range, the court should consider all relevant conduct that establish the offenses of conviction. There is no constitution impediment to considering acquitted conduct at the sentencing. And even if Judge Aaron finds certain conduct to be acquitted conduct, that is not otherwise relevant conduct under the guidelines. It should still be considered that the conduct under Section 3553A. They say the threats of fear, cross reference, and the serious bodily injury enhancement apply. They said threats or fear cross reference applies. They give the applicable law discussion. They also said there's enhancement for serious bodily injury applies. If the court, and then they say if the court does not apply the threats and fear cross reference, right? Multiple victims and fraud of coercion enhancements apply. They are grouping multiple victims, enhancement of fraud, coercion, and also an enhancement for the defendant's aggregating role, vulnerable victims, obstruction of justice, and of course, enhancement for organizers or leaders applies. They're saying he's an organizer or leader, and enhancement for vulnerable victim applies, and enhancement for obstruction of justice applies. If you guys are wondering what enhancements is, I explained that a little while ago, but basically it's all a numbers game. So every single time I say you do something right, it's literally like Judgment Day. You get a check, you get like one little, dead man row. And every time you do something right, we erase one. It literally is like keeping ledger at Judgment Day. They said Diddy does not qualify for acceptance of responsibility points. He does not qualify for the 0-point offender reduction. He is not entitled to a significant downward departure based on the cumulative effect of the guidelines enhancements. They also say that his conduct warrants a term of imprisonment of at least 135 months imprisonment. The nature and seriousness of the offense warrant a substantial term of imprisonment. The need to avoid unwarranted sentencing disparities mandates a substantial term of imprisonment. And they go on to say that similarly situated defendants receive sentences reflecting the threats, the manipulation, and the abuse used toward the victims. Really quick, let me just pause. I think this is a very good argument that the government is making because Diddy's team wants to act like it was just, he was just like, Sean Combs, milk toast, just a little, hi, yes, I would like the blowjob special. Yes, please. No, I'll just stand in the corner and watch. Like he was some shrinking MF and Violet. Like he was just like this. When at the end of the day, he was depraved. But it's a depravity where maybe he would only do time served if the victims were willing. But the victims weren't willing, and they said they weren't willing. We have one victim, Cassie, on camera fleeing a freak out that he was trying to drag her back to. Let's also not forget the other psychological stuff that I believe that was happening. Cassie had a movie premiere. Cassie was feeling good about herself. Diddy needed to keep Cassie under his foot so he could beat her and treat her like a dog. It did not escape my attention that he forced her into a freak off when she had a movie premiere, then proceeded to beat her up, probably so she could be on that red carpet covered in bruises. And even though this might be the best night of her life, feeling this big so that he could be the person to pick her up and walk her to another freak off. Do you see what I'm saying? I think, again, it's all the cycle of abuse. That's just my thing of it. That's why he was dragging her back, because the point was that whenever Cassie got any type of success, he had to demoralize her. He had to make her feel like filth. He had to put his hands on her, anything to break her soul and spirit. All right. Also, you guys, we have Capricorn Clark's statement, Deontay Nash's statement, Cassie's parents' statements. We're going to read that in a little bit because I feel like the media really skipped over it. And I know a lot of people say, oh, the media is not pro Diddy. They're unbiased. I don't believe that, because every time they have an opportunity to read everything in full, they just give us a little snippet. But anytime there's anything good about Diddy, baby, they will like line it up line it up. And they will give nothing but, I think, talking points to the dirty. Thank God the people that they give talking points to Diddy don't got any following, no clout, and everybody thinks they're an idiot except for their dumb friends around them. And who cares? Having one smart person is worth having 50 dum dums on your team. I don't care what you say, you know. And the sad thing is, there's nobody of true moral character that can come through, at least on social media, and really defend Diddy. Anyway, um they said that, da 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 da, blah, 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 blah. Oh, again, Diddy is significantly more culpable than other Johns prosecuted by the DOJ, and the need for specific and general deterrence to promote respect for the law warrants a substantial term of imprisonment. They said the history and characteristics of the defendant warrant a substantial term of imprisonment. And they go on to say the defendant's arguments for a lenient sentence are unpersuasive. Conditions at the MDC do not warrant a lenient sentence. The defendant's psychiatric evaluations are unreliable and do not warrant a lenient sentence. That's on page 156. We're going to have to read that. And the defendant's personal circumstances do not warrant a lenient sentence. The court should impose the maximum financial penalties to reflect the serious nature. Okay, so let's get to the introduction. Okay, let's see how they come out swinging. And then we're going to jump around and get to the good stuff and then come back to the other stuff. Throughout this case and over the course of a 7-week trial, this court has seen extensive evidence demonstrating the defendant's criminal conduct perpetrated across more than a decade. At trial, the defendant disputed that the government had made out particular elements of the charged federal offenses, but he largely conceded his conduct: the violence, domestic abuse, drug use, distribution, and bribery. The prosecution is saying, baby, we don't need that tired, dusty jury to tell us what drug use, distribution, and bribery are. Judge Aaron, you remember second year law school. Actually, I think criminal law is year one. You remember criminal law. You know what drug use, distribution, and bribery is, even if the jury didn't understand that. The defendant will not be punished for any crimes of which he was acquitted, of course. But punishment for his crimes of conviction must take into account the manner in which he committed them. His crimes of conviction are serious and have warranted sentences over 10 years in multiple cases for defendants who, like Diddy, engaged in violence and put others in fear. Consistent with those cases and based on the corroborative evidence presented at trial, this court should impose a sentence of no less than 135 months imprisonment. Again, heavy on the no less. A substantial term of imprisonment is also needed in this case because the defendant is unrepentant. Incredibly, while the defendant conceded his acts of violence and abuse throughout trial, he now argues that his victim should shoulder the blame. He tries to recast decades of abuse as simply the function of a mutually toxic relationship. But there is nothing mutual about a relationship where one person holds all the power and the others end up bloodied and bruised. Indeed, in connection with sentencing, Cassandra Ventura, who along with multiple escorts was transported across state lines by the defendant for multi-day freak-offs in connection with count 3, of which the defendant was convicted, writes to the court that freak-offs were degrading and disgusting, leaving her with infections, illness, and exhaustion. She became addicted to drugs the defendant provided her. She still has nightmares about the defendant's conceded physical abuse, which lasted more than a decade and left her with permanent scars all over her body. The defendant's abuse drove Cassie to suicidal thoughts, which she almost followed through on as she testified at trial. She asked that the court impose a sentence that considers the many lives that he upended with abuse and control. The court also heard testimony and reviewed contemporaneous communications from Jane, who, along with the escorts, was transported across state lines by the defendant for hotel nights in connection with count 5, which also Diddy was convicted on. Jane's testimony and communications detail how she was manipulated and beaten by him. That evidence included a note Jane wrote to herself about how she felt violated and was tormented by how the defendant had placed and paid all of these harmful men on me and risked my health every single time for 2.5 years. Defendants who perpetrate violations of the Mann Act and violating such violence and fear regularly face significant penalties. Diddy should be no exceptions, particularly when his history and characteristics demonstrate years of abuse and violence. Several former employees abused and exploited by the defendant, including one of whom the defendant sexually assaulted, submitted letters to the court in connection with the sentencing. These letters uniformly ask that the court impose a sentence that reflects the severity of Diddy's conduct, his history, and his pattern of violence. Given the seriousness and duration of the offense conduct, as well as his decades of unchecked violence, consideration of the relevant factors weighs heavily in favor of substantial sentence as well as his statutory maximum fine. The sentence imposed on the defendant should reflect the substantial psychological, emotional, and physical damage he has inflicted. Most significantly, the nature and seriousness of the offense, the need for deterrence, and to promote respect for the law and the history and characteristics of the defendant warrant a sentence of no less than 135 months imprisonment. Such a sentence is consistent with similarly situated defendants who commit the Mann Act violations. Okay, so it goes into the trial. We already did that. They talk about the defendant's bail, the offense conduct. They go into that. We've already covered that in hold on a second, really quick, you guys. Okay, I'm back. Sorry about that, guys. Okay. Oh, let's look at this poll really quick. So, 69% of you think Diddy will get over 5 years. 3% of you think that Diddy will walk away. 3%. And 16% think he's not going to get 5 years. Okay. So, let's get back into this. Ugh. My pet peeve, honestly, is when people waste my time waiting for something that's not gonna happen. Anyway, they go over the freak offs, right? Uh, go into his relationship with Jane. We already know all this. But for anybody wondering on whether the Diddy people were telling the truth, and I mean the people defending Diddy as to what happened in court and calling people liars, you can go into the sentencing memo because everything I said is written in the report too. So you know what it is, right? All right. So um let's keep going. Hold on. Okay. So in any case, wrong person. 1 second. Okay. So anyway, they talk about the violence. We went through that in multiple things. Uh oh, wait, look at this. This is very important. So they bring up a bunch of people who, even though they might not have testified, they bring up bunch of people. They said Deontay Nash worked as a stylist for Cassie, blah, 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 blah. He witnessed the defendant's violence against Cassie. We already know that because Deontay testified. They talk about Bana, right? They doubled down and said on another occasion in or about September 2016, they don't get tripped up over the date. They doubled down and say Diddy held her over a 17th floor balcony and screamed at her before throwing her on the balcony furniture, resulting in injury to Bana's legs, back, and next. They have a September 2016 text from Cassie and KK about the balcony incident. The balcony incident happened. And even though Westmoreland did an amazing job as a lawyer, a horrible job as a human being, same thing with Mark Agnifilio, same thing with Brian Still, same thing with Xavier Donaldson, same thing with Shapiro. They did a great job as lawyers, horrible things as human beings, because they were trying to make Bana look like she was a liar to the jury, but the jury couldn't see the argument that happened between the prosecution and defense, where the prosecution couldn't get key evidence admitted into it. Okay. Carrie Morgan, right? That's Cassie's best friend. She testified. She said that uh if you don't remember, they said in 2018, Carrie testified that Diddy entered Cassie's house unannounced where Carrie was there. Cassie locked herself in a bathroom, and Diddy came up behind Carrie and choked her, resulting in finger marks on her neck. Again, and I can't stress this enough. All those stupid Diddy pages saying we were all lying. I mean, everybody that was against Diddy and thought he was a depraved abuser, everything is set out in these legal documents in the court of law. And I dare you to say, they're probably not even going to bring this up because they can't read. They can't even read that check to realize Diddy should put a few more zeros on there. So what are you doing, right? Get this. Diddy then threw a wooden hanger at Carrie's head. Okay. Carrie suffered from a concussion, vomiting, and dizziness due to the assault and visited an urgent care facility to obtain medical treatment. As a matter of fact, she actually got a settlement, not a settlement, but Diddy asked, according to Cassie and according to Carrie, had Cassie go and offer her a check for her to keep quiet. And by this time, Carrie was done with Cassie because she was like, I've been your best friend and this man, and now he's beating me. I got to go. And she faded out of Cassie's life. But again, Diddy's team in court tried to say that Cassie was the one paying for a settlement. And Carrie was like, no, that money came from Diddy. What are you talking about? All right. Listen to this. I think this is Chef Jordan Atkinson. They said Jordan Atkinson worked as Diddy's personal chef from approximately 2007 to 2010. And around 2008, Jordan and Diddy got into a verbal fight. And Diddy pushed Chef Jordan, which caused her to fall backwards down a flight of stairs. Diddy pushed this chef down a flight of stairs. After this altercation, Diddy instructed David James to file a false police report indicated that she had been an aggressor. David James testified about the false police report in court and also confirmed this. Again, the Diddy people want you to believe that David James was like, Diddy's a great person, but he confirmed this. Let's talk about, they even got Gina Hahn in here. They said Diddy began a romantic relationship with Virginia Gina Hahn in approximately 2014 and continued through approximately 2022. As witnessed by Diddy's then personal assistant, George Kaplan, the defendant attacked Gina at Diddy's Miami residence by throwing apples from a decorative ball at Gina's head. Later that evening, he observed Gina trying to leave the residence, but Diddy's security did not permit her to leave. There is a text message from Paul Oxford, the defendant's former head of security, referencing the incident between Diddy and Gina and warning Diddy, if anyone called the police is 100% going to lock you up. Again, I don't want to take a victory lap, but did I lie? Did I lie? Did I lie? This is in the court documents. This is what they are saying, that this is why Judge Aaron should lock Diddy up and throw away the key. And I bet you $1 billion, Diddy's team is not going to contest any of these events because they have the proof. All right. But they said he engaged in other misconduct. In December 2011, as discussed in December 2011, Diddy discovered during a freak-off that Cassie had begun dating Kid Cudi. Diddy tried to attack Cassie with a corkscrew, but Cassie ran. The defendant had Rube, one of his personal security, drive him to Capricorn Clark's apartment, where he pounded on Clark's front door with a bang bang. The defendant demanded that Capricorn go with him and Rube to Kid Cudi's house in Hollywood, where the defendant said he was going to murk Kid Cudi. Despite Capricorn Clark telling him that she did not want to go with him, Diddy, still armed with a bang bang, forced Capricorn to accompany him to Kid Cudi's home. Kid Cudi was not at home when the defendant arrived, and the defendant and Rube broke into Kid Cudi's home. The Los Angeles Police Department officer Crisio Ignacio responded to a 911 call reporting a break-in at Kid Cudi's home, observed a black Cadillac with license plates registered to Bad Boy Productions, the defendant's company, drove by twice. Now, here's another thing that Diddy's team, even though they did their best to make Capricorn Clark look like a liar, and she was very, very credible, I will say this. The fact that they were able to brainwash the masses when by making it seem like, oh, we can't trust that cop. Tell me how the cop on the scene wrote down the license plate to the SUV in front of Kid Cudi's home. And when they ran the license plate, it was registered to Bad Boy Entertainment. Was that a coincidence? Anyway, they also talk about arson. That's when he blew up the car, blew up the Kid Cudi's car. They also want to talk about where is it? Oh, eventually, this is what Eddie Garcia. Remember when KK, this is bribery, reached out to Eddie Garcia? Diddy told Garcia that he had a little too much to drink, and you know how things was with women, and that if the video got out, it could ruin him. Garcia and his boss eventually agreed to sell the video for $50,000. Anyway, multiple witnesses testified about the drug use and distribution. And baby, don't listen to what those Diddy people got to say about drug use isn't a big crime. Hiring prostitutes like they know because they on their knees dropping and give Diddy every 50 they can to earn that check, which is probably too low because people that intelligence, I fail to think that you're actually charging what your worth is, right? And we all see that. Unlike me, your ad dollars ain't hitting, so you got to sell your soul. I'm just saying. I'm just saying. We see. We see. Anyway, right? Um, Anyway, the defense dismisses the conduct as sex, rugs, and rock and roll, but it's just another way of saying the consequences for the average person of committing crimes don't apply to Diddy, okay? Brenda Paul even testified about being arrested. So let's get into the sentencing guidelines. They go through all that stuff. Um, they say that da, 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 mm, how do they say it should be calculated? Hold on. Okay, so they give it a whole thing about the calculation. We'll get back to that. Um, blah, blah, blah. Hold on, I'm just flipping through this. We'll come back to it, but I'm flipping through this because they're arguing like hell, making a good argument that they added it up. See, here's the thing. Why Diddy wants the new trial. He wants a new trial because if he gets a new trial for the Mann Act, a lot of this evidence of violence, coercion, fraud, all the things that Mark Agnifilio said, it was a modern day love story. All that stuff won't be included. And then he'll just be standing there only talking about did escorts come and did they leave. That's why they want a new trial so bad. But with this, like they said, even though you were acquitted, the conduct that you admitted to, so you admitted to all these conducts, right? The jury said it wasn't RICO. The jury said it wasn't trafficking, but you admitted to the conduct. And under the rule of the law, it's still arson. It's still bribery. It's still, you admitted you did it. You're just saying it wasn't RICO and it wasn't trafficking. And fine, the jury decided that. But that doesn't mean that that conduct does not apply to what you did. All right. Let's get back into. Oh, there's no constitutional impediment to considering acquitted conduct in the sentencing. Again, there's no need for the court to reach to reach the constitutional issues raised by the Diddy. While Diddy asserts repeatedly that he was acquitted of the conduct underlying the government's proposed sentencing guidelines, he fails to explain how these guidelines calculation is inconsistent with the jury verdict. Barring any such direct conflict with the necessary finding of the jury, it is impossible to know exactly why the jury found the defendant not guilty on a certain charge. Accordingly, without specific jury findings, no one can logically or realistically draw any factual inferences from the government's evidence. Okay. Therefore, it is inappropriate for a sentencing court to speculatively conclude that a jury found or rejected a certain fact based on its verdict of acquittal, let alone to allow such conjuncture to guide a sentencing. Okay. They said, but even if the court were to conclude that to apply these guideline enhancements, it would necessarily have to find facts that the jury did not find beyond a reasonable doubt, there is no constitutional obstacle to doing so. Diddy's arguments that doing so would raise serious constitutional and fairness concerns is incorrect. As a matter of long settled Supreme Court and Second Circuit precedents, that Second Circuit is New York. This court may consider conduct that was the subject of a charge on which the jury acquitted in determining the appropriate sentence for the defendant. And by doing so, both the general rule and in the circumstances of this case does not raise the constitutional and fairness concerns suggested by Diddy. On the contrary, if the court finds by a preponderance that the defendant committed certain conduct, it would be inconsistent with Section 3553A and with the sentencing guidelines and would introduce unwarranted sentencing disparities for the court to close its eyes to the conduct in fashioning an appropriate sentence. The problem with Diddy's arguments is that they are foreclosed by precedents. What is precedent? It means that a bunch of other people have been tried for similar crimes in similar circumstances, and the Second Circuit, where they lie, precedence is very, very hard. It's almost like tradition, but legally mandated tradition. So they're trying to say that if you need saying that this has already been settled in the Second Circuit. People like you, Diddy, that did Diddy like things, this is how much time they got. So how are you saying it only needs to be 14 months? They said the jury's verdict of acquittal does not prevent the sentencing court from considering conduct underlying the acquitted charge, as long as the conduct has been proved by a preponderance of the evidence. This is because an acquittal merely proves the existence of a reasonable doubt as to defendant's guilt. It does not prove, and like I've been saying, it does not prove that that the defendant is innocent. For him to be proven innocent, they would have to be like, he is not guilty of arson, not guilty of bribery, not guilty of this. It just proves, it does not prove it was innocent. It just proves that there was a slight chance, or maybe more, that he was innocent. Okay. Again, it's not that he won, it's that the government lost. And according with Watts, the Second Circuit has repeatedly held that district courts may find facts relevant to sentencing, as opposed to elements of the offense, by a preponderance of the evidence, and in doing so, may take into account acquitted conduct when sentencing defendants. They are basically saying, Judge Aaron, it's you. You got the floor. Make it work. Make it do. They are literally telling Judge Aaron, it's your show. Do what you got to do and do it how you want. And judging by the way Judge Aaron is always annoyed at Diddy, and judging by the way he acted at the actual verdict reading and the bail hearing, I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. They said, in short, the Second Circuit has rejected the very arguments raised by Diddy here and held that consideration of acquitted conduct does not violate the constitutional provisions on which Diddy relies. Again, they cite Second Circuit 2005, US v. Vaughn. District courts may find facts relevant to sentencing by preponderance of the evidence, even where the jury acquitted the defendant of the conduct. Also, Second Circuit 2018, US v. Muir. Defendants' arguments that consideration of acquitted conduct at sentencing violated the due process and double jeopardy clause of the Fifth Amendment and the Sixth Amendment's guarantee of trial by jury were foreclosed by circuit precedents. Baby, do what you need to do, Judge Aram. They say Diddy tries to downplay this wall of precedents by arguing that Watts addressed an argument under double jeopardy clause and did not specifically consider the constitutional provisions such as the Sixth Amendment, jury trial right, and due process clause. That argument misses the clear import of Watt's holding, which is that sentencing courts may take acquitted conduct into account at sentencing without offending the constitutional. In Watts, for proposition that a sentencing court may also take into account the defendant's prior current, even if the defendant is okay, we already read this. The Second Circuit has expressly held that the due process clause and the Sixth Amendment, which I believe is double jeopardy, as well as it's not, as well as the double jeopardy clause, all permit consideration of acquitted conduct as citizen, describing Watts as a clear Supreme Court precedent holding that a sentencing court may consider uncharged and acquitted conduct in determining sentence. If Judge Aaron actually takes on Watts, Diddy is done. Because Diddy is done. Again, nothing about this case is typical, but Diddy is done. So they go on to say, nah, Judge, you can do what you want. All right. But here's the interesting part. They said even if the court finds conduct to be acquitted conduct, that is not otherwise relevant conduct under the guidelines. It should still be considered that conduct. They said, as discussed above, let's see. The new section only addresses the consideration of acquitted conduct that, with respect to the district court's calculation of the guideline range, it does not speak at all to what the district court may consider when determining his sentence. To this end, in amending the statute, the Sentencing Commission made clear that even acquitted conduct that is not relevant conduct for purposes of determining the guidelines range, because it does not also underlie in whole or in part the counts of conviction, can still be considered. Oof, they are cooking. I wonder how. So are they using Second Circuit binding law though? So they spout law. It's actually in the statute, federal statutes. In the U.S. Sentencing Commission's statute amendment 826, this is binding, right? This gives Judge Aaron the right to do this without Diddy having any right to appeal. They say that no limitation shall be placed on the information concerning the background, character, and conduct of a person convicted of an offense which the court of the United States may receive and consider for the purposes of imposing an appropriate sentence. The court must consider the factors set forth in the section 3553 when imposing sentence, including the history and characteristics of the defendant and the need for the sentence imposed to afford adequate deterrence of criminal conduct and to protect the public from further crimes of the defendant. Diddy. With this background, there's no question that information concerning the defendant's violence, coercion, and abuse toward Cassie and Jane, as well as other victims, is properly before this court. These facts are exactly the kind of information the court is not only permitted to consider, but must consider when determining the appropriate sentence for the defendant in this case. You guys, this is the Sentencing Commission. So if Judge Aaron does want to do an upward departure, right? But and I know upward departure is not the right word to use because there is no minimum or maximum in this. But if he wants to go upward from what the probation sentencing report suggests, literally, what is it? The guidelines under in the U.S. Sentencing Commission federal rule book says, yeah, you got it. Go, 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 go. Okay, so they go into that. I want to get into switch for 1 second. There was stuff about Jane. So they talk about Jane's with the threats of far. I will say one thing. Tisa lie, did I? Because every argument I was making, okay, not every argument, but a lot of arguments I was making is actually written right here. What else can we do? Hold on really quick, you guys. Let's just do, what else can we do? 1 second, you guys. Okay, let me just scroll through this really, really, really quick and get into it. Okay, where are we? Sorry, guys. Wait. Hold on. Where's my camera? Sorry, everybody. There I am. Okay. So let's get into this. They also say that, one second, needed the fan. They also said that, mm, okay, so let's get into these letters real quick. We'll come back to this because there is so much juiciness in this. They they show how he's the leader and organizer. They said it might not be Rico, but you are the leader and you are the organizer. So, like, what are we really doing? Where is my phone? It's right here. Okay, so they say that he is the leader and the organizer. So this is about basically why he deserves, you did it and you deserve to rot in hell. That's basically what they're saying in a nutshell. But let's get into some of these um victim statements because I find this to be, I actually want to find the part about his mental health. That part is very, very, very interesting to me. So we're going through right now. Mm, they're saying that the reason they said defendant's conduct warrants a term of imprisonment of at least 135 months of imprisonment. It lasted for 15 years, spanned across the country and the globe, and involved dozens of participants. In the wake of this criminal conduct, in the wake of this criminal conduct, what's up, Jamie? What's up? Shout out to Mama and Papa Jamie. Okay. So they said that many others. Oh, sorry. In wake of his criminal conduct, he left Ventura and Jane broken and beaten. Many others suffered at his hands, whether through physical abuse or psychological humiliation. Time and again, he has shown that he is concerned only with his own power and control. Only a significant term of imprisonment, meted out in a substantial number of years, can effectively deter him and show future victims that their abusers will be held accountable, no matter their wealth or fame. Such a sentence is also consistent with other similarly situated defendants who have used violence and coercion to further the Mann Act offenses. Okay, so let's get into his mental health because Diddy tried to literally get a psychiatrist to be like, I've talked to him and he said, I think Diddy's psychiatrist is probably the same dentist that treated Tamar. They talk about some, he saw we, he is saw we. Oh, this is good. They said that Diddy is simply no ordinary John who casually consumed commercial smacks. Rather, his conduct is far closer to that of a pimp who exploits and controls women into having unwanted sexual encounters through tactics including manipulation, threats, fear, controlled substances, and physical violence. As detailed below, multiple defendants convicted principally of the Mann Act violations have been sentenced to significant terms of imprisonment for conduct more akin to Diddy's conduct than those of the cases relied on by the defendant. So who are they giving us? USV Barrero. Oh, 180-month sentence on guidelines range of 151 to 181 months imprisonment after disputed application of threats of fear cross-reference. Ooh, also USV Bernat, what is this? Benavides? Statutory maximum 120-month sentence on guidelines range of 120 months after disputed application of threats or fear cross reference. Also, somebody got 120 months after the application of following victim recanting. Ooh, this is a good one. They're trying to say that, well, Gina recanted, so you can't even count her into sentencing. They said, oh, no, no, no. We have a case, right? In where there was a statutory maximum of 120-month sentence on guidelines range of 120 months after the victim recanted their statement. And they go on and on and on and on and on. Hold on really quick. We are getting to the mental health part. You know me. I'm like, what's the they said that 14-month sentence is too light because it would create sentencing disparity and nobody wants sentencing disparity. What else are we into? He's more culpable than other Johns because he's a billionaire and he uses power and influence and, hmm. It is going to be funny to see that all the harassment and bullying that Diddy's team, and not this team, but I think people that are on Diddy's side on social media did. I really do honestly think that they're going to regret it. Because the funny thing is, the victims, right? And the jury have to keep their mouth shut. Okay. But and they're not allowed to look. But the judge was on social media. The judge was watching things. The judge was reading articles. The judge is allowed to educate himself, I believe, right? And if that's the case, that means all that victim, all that bullying, all that harassment, well, all that bullying and harassment. Yeah. Let's see. Da-da-da-da. Let's see what else he did. Hold on. They bring up a whole bunch of businessmen that did the same thing as Diddy. They got higher sentences, and these businessmen did not use any violence. The history and characterizations. Let me see. I think they're about to read Diddy. Da-da. They said, while a holistic view of Diddy certainly reveals a person who has achieved a great professional success, it also reveals a person whose abuse has tormented many beyond those impacted by the offense conduct. His violence towards Cassie and Jane was not aberrational. He did not limit his reign of abuse to his girlfriends. He abused individuals in his orbit for decades, including his employees and Cassie's friends, assaulting them, threatening them, and throwing objects at them like Deontay Nash, Mr. Cootie Patootie, whom the defendant physically assaulted on several occasions when he would not comply with his directives. Or Cassie's best friend, who was hit in the head by a wooden hanger thrown by the defendant, leaving her unconscious. And that's after he tried to choke her out. Or Mia, who witnessed his violence against Cassie, and whom he did other stuff too. Blah, 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 blah. His abuse for those around him was so routine that he perpetuated a culture of fear. Chef Jordan, the defendant's former personal chef, described an abusive work environment dominated by fear, in which the defendant weaponized food, sleep, and breaks, leaving Chef Jordan to be diagnosed with stress-induced apalachia and extreme anxiety attacks. His conduct had a lasting impact on Chef Jordan. She buried her memories of abuse in order to survive and found it traumatizing, having to unearth the past and relive it all again. Similarly, Capricorn Clark's tenure working for the defendant altered the course of her life and has haunted her for years. Capricorn states she paid with her life for the events that transpired. And he fired her after that. He had Clark blacklisted from the industry, leaving her no choice but to work outside the industry to support herself and her nonverbal autistic son. How did he ain't ish? Or to grovel to him for employment. She saw firsthand the violence and his absolute power, both of which unchecked because of his wealth and fame. Okay, so now we're getting into it. They said Diddy's arguments for a lenient sentence are unpersuasive. Um, he argues that the conditions of the MDC, yeah, we know, wah, 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 it's not working. Oh, here we go. Diddy's psychiatric evaluation are unreliable and do not warrant a lenient sentence. They said Diddy also argues for a lenient sentence based on claims that he's been rehabilitated and will continue to rehabilitate once released from custody. In support of this contention, he submits two reports by doctors Cougar and Kaplan stating they probably went to the same school Tamar's dentist went. In substance, that the defendant is something, something, something is blacked out. These, mm, okay, so hold on. Now, they do a footnote. They said, so part of it's blacked out, but listen to this. They said the government also notes that while Diddy elsewhere in his submission contains that there are no other educational courses offered at the MDC, aside from his course, Free Game with Diddy, that too is false. The MDC offers a plethora of educational courses, including GED programming, post secondary courses through the partnership with Columbia University, and adult continuing education classes. Although the defendant has not enrolled in any educational offerings during his time at the MDC, he completed the Strategies for Change, Relationship, and Personal Responsibility, Quiet Moments, and Managing My Emotions programs. It should be noted that Dr. Cougar states that a concern exists that the risk for domestic violence might not be captured by these instruments absent victim outcry or by notification to police or by an arrest. Oh my God, his own doctor that he hired to say that he won't do that anymore covered their butt and said, "But we need to let you know there's a concern that exists that the risk for domestic violence might not be captured by these instruments I'm using, absent any victim outcry or by notification to police or by an arrest." They said, moreover, Diddy cites that the Bureau of Prison psychology records for the proposition that the defendant is at low risk of sexual abusiveness. However, as noted in the defendant's Bureau of Prison records, that assessment is limited to his conduct while incarcerated and notes that the defendant may engage in this type of behavior in the future. Oh my God, Diddy can't stop lying. They literally they said, no, Diddy has low risk of sexual abuse while he's in jail. Cause you know, those boys were like, nah, bro, nah. They said, so they go on to say, listen, these psychological reports are unreliable. While it appears that doctors were provided with Cassie and Jane's testimony, it does not appear that they provided them with any testimony in the case, including testimony regarding incidents of violence and sexual abuse involving other trial witnesses. Moreover, these psychiatrists were uh, they were provided with only a couple dozen pages of Cassie and Jane's vast text communications. The excerpts provided to the doctors appear to be blatantly self serving, such as a handful of sexually explicit communications from Cassie to Diddy, cherry picked out of thousands of pages of their communications. And the doctors do not appear to have been provided with any of Cassie's any of Diddy's communications with Jane. This skewed sample of records calls into question the reliability of conclusions of these reports. Furthermore, it is clear that Diddy, whose interviews formed the central basis of these medical evaluations, is an untrustworthy narrative. Listen, Jamie asked a question. She said, can this lawyer say the only way he can get the proper mental help is if he gets out since the jail didn't provide him what he needed? Not true. The psychiatrist can come. He didn't, well, this is their point. He didn't enroll in anything. He didn't enroll in enough. And also that's not an excuse because the psychiatrist can come visit you in jail one time a week. Y'all saw Silence of the Lambs. Y'all know y'all know how this works. The psychiatrist can go to them and visit them behind bars while Diddy is wearing like a a little, I don't know even what those masks, the Silence of the Lamb mask. Anyway, right? Um, get this. Get this. In his many interviews with Dr. Kruger, Diddy denied all wrongdoing for any of the charges in which he was ultimately convicted. He described his relationship with Cassie as involving mutual violence, noting he probably said it's blacked out, but he probably said she hit me too, despite the clear evidence that he was the primary aggressor. The defendant also claimed to be something else is blacked out. I guess this is actually this. So this is blacked out because it's actually from his communications with his psychiatrist, and that's HIPAA, so they can't release it. But they're giving us the clapback. He also claimed something and denied any other accusations of sexual harassment or of sexual crimes, despite numerous pending civil lawsuits against him. Eat it up, eat it up, eat it up, many of which involve allegations of sexual misconduct. The defendant also claimed that he was interested in blank and blank. Satanic, devil worship? I don't know what it is. I'm just guessing. That figure simply cannot square with the testimony of Cassie and Jane. Oh, he must have said that he's interested in helping victims of domestic violence, or I don't know, who testified that. Oh, hold on. Sorry about that, Jamie. Who testified um, who testified that freak-offs or hotel nights often lasted several days and sometimes took place weekly, whether because of self-delusion or self-preservation. Eat it up. The defendant told a Myraid, how do you say this word? Myraid? I can never pronounce this word. A Mirad, Mirad, whatever. He told a lot of half truths when speaking with these doctors, further undermining the conclusions of their evaluations. In light of this fact and the skewed record provided to the doctors, it is not surprising that the conclusions reached by both doctors echo the defendant's own narratives and are entirely inconsistent with the record. Yo, Diddy is wilding. Get this. Diddy's attempts to blame his violent conduct on his history of substance abuse is also misguided. The defendant told doctors Kruger and Kaplan that something, something, something. Yet, several of the defendant's most violent acts did not appear to have occurred under the influence of any type of drugs. Flores testifying that the defendant did not appear drunk or high at the time of the intercontinental assault. There was also something noting that the defendant took champagne and tequila, but had not otherwise taken narcotics prior to his assault of Jane in 2024. Indeed, while Dr. Kruger points to Diddy's something as a potential cause of his violence, noting that blank, why do I feel like Janice's Combs' name is blocked out right there? The noting that blank, these medications, oh, maybe I don't know, sleeping pills, I don't know. These medications, in reality, it was the defendant who sought out excessive amounts of these prescription drugs, including by having doctors prescribe medications in the names of his employees where he exceeded the regular dose. Again, how did the jury not at least get him on drug distribution? Like the evidence is there. On this record, the court should reject any conclusions drawn from these assessments regarding Diddy's proclivity for sexual abuse and violence. Further, Diddy's false statements to his evaluating doctor about his criminal conduct and his personal history emphasizes the need for the sentence imposed to account for specific deterrence. I know that's right. But listen, they quoted from the docket 375 at page 89, stating that the court had also considered the evidence of his mitigation reports. You did not have to speak with a psychologist, but in my view, your efforts to explain away your conduct and some things were just demonstrably false tells me that you will not be deterred. The sentence must act as a deterrent. Oh, this is for a case. Okay. This is C. Kelly, UV Kelly. I'm like, when did Judge Aaron say this? Okay. Anyway, ultimately, the best predictor of future performance is past behavior. Remember that when you guys like don't want to watch my channel. I've entertained you in the past. So in the future, I am more likely to entertain you. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. That's all I'm saying. Hit that like, subscribe button, show your girl some love. Okay? Also, the defendant has shown time and time again his inability to cease his abusive behavior, even in the face of potential criminal, professional, and financial penalties. Woo! That was they ate him up. Oh, get this. Before we get to Deontay's Nash and Capricorn Clock statement and also Cassie's parents' statement, I just want to read this because this is very important. But hold on, let me send this out really quickly. Hold on. Okay. So they said the defendant's personal circumstances do not warrant a lenient sentence. They said, finally, did he ask the court to consider his family circumstances and community contributions to imposing sentence? What is that? Letting us know that Young Miami was a charity work by taking her to the Met Gala that changed her life? They said, finally, the court can and should consider these facts under section 3553. However, Diddy must also be held to account for the fact that he used the same wealth and power to enable his crimes, to fly escorts on hundreds of occasions, to keep Cassie and Jane under the influence of narcs for days at a time, and to lever his resources to threaten his victims. And let me just keep in mind, these are the people that we know about. These are the people brave enough to come forward. Not saying the people that kept their mouth shut were cowards, but they came forward and said something. You know what I'm saying? Um, they said further, although uh although many defendants come from sentencing courts will come to sentencing courts with compelling mitigating factors contextualizing why they turned to crime. Diddy has enjoyed a remarkable life of privilege. He disclaims a history of abuse or neglect as a child, and he has had full support of his family throughout his life. Yet, despite this, Diddy nevertheless engaged in abusive conduct for over a decade. Um, they also she talks about collateral damage. They said, "Who cares? He is not a victim. Who cares? What happens to your empire? It can all burn. This is my Roman Empire. I will stand on this." Anyway, financial penalties. Okay, so let's get into. I did a video where I Cassie's letter, which was so powerful, but also Cassie's parents wrote a letter. Okay, Cassie's parents wrote a letter, and we are going to read it. Yeah. Dear Judge Aaron, we're writing you as extremely concerned parents regarding the upcoming sentencing of the defendant referenced above. We have read many online reports that state that months are being suggested for his punishment sentence, as opposed to the many years we feel he deserves. I love the fact they're not even saying this man's name. 11 years is the length of time this horrific nightmare lasted. During that time, our daughter was beaten repeatedly and exposed to harmful and copious amounts of drugs. She was held like a prisoner, kidnapping by Diddy when her face told the story of a beating. She was coerced to perform sexual acts with strangers and prostitutes for his own sexual gratification. None of the sexual acts were consensual, as there is no consent in a domestic violence relationship. This is true. There was always the threat of violence. Everything she did with, for, and because of this defendant was self preservation. She was, in fact, brutalized by his power and depravity. Our daughter is dealing with the psychological, emotional, as well as the physical aftermath of the abuse she endured at the hands of the defendant. She'll be left to deal with the trauma of his abuse far beyond a 27-month sentence with time served, as suggested by the defense attorney. We believe the charges that the defendant was convicted of are not only federal crimes, but they are also severe violations of human self worth and freedom. Clearly, a vile abuse of power coupled with an immense disregard for human life. To sentence lightly in this case that involves such vicious abuse of our daughter's body, safety, and dignity is to dismiss her very existence. To sentence lightly would also send a dangerous message. A sentence that is handed down in months instead of years sends a message that such repulsive behavior can happen without meaningful consequences. In closing, we, her parents, urge you to deliver a sentence that appropriately reflects the severity and depravity of the abuse, the breach of trust, and the suffering that our daughter experienced. The justice system must be a place where the voices of those who have endured sexual and physical abuse are heard, believed, and honored with the appropriate accountability. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Regina and Roderick Ventura. Cast to Cassandra Ventura's finds parents, victim one. Now, the next person is me. I will talk about that in a second, but I do want to say this that I find to be very I feel like when we're watching this Diddy trial, I feel like a little bit like we are, in fact, watching history. In the fact that we can now go back to courts in 1980 and found men that beat their wives, girlfriends, whatever, viciously, and the girlfriends were sent to jail for hitting back. It's sad that we're living in a time where there is a bunch of low life, disgusting, morally depraved, wannabe men that are mad that they turn out to be losers. It's not my fault you're Diddy's age and you're not a billionaire, but we are in an age of men and the dusty women that co-sign them, because you can't place in patriarchy, you gotta be pretty, you gotta be young, you gotta be dumb, you gotta be all three. Two out of three ain't working, right? You can't place in patriarchy. So the only way that you can even be acknowledged as a human being is to become a dumb cheerleader while you literally cheer for your own brethren, your own sisters, your own kind women to walk off the same cliff just so you can get a Scooby snack from a man that ain't nothing. It's weird to me, but I see why they support Diddy now, because it's like you was doing all this for Scooby snacks. You was lowering yourself for men that had one millionth of what Diddy had. So you don't understand how somebody can be with a billionaire, because you was getting talked down to and treated like a dog for nothing. So you somehow think, I don't know, the pipeline from pick me to aged out pick me to bitter women that instead of leading the tribe are laughing while they help lead other like pretty young things off a cliff and throwing them to predators, all because they're jealous that they're not pretty young things. I'm being serious. There is a pipeline. And one day I'm going to discuss that. There is a pipeline to age out pick me that turns into a woman. Instead of taking your place and leading the tribe, you literally feeding your own brethren to wolves. But I do think that in time, we're going to look back on Diddy's case and be like, damn, we was down bad. Thank God because of this legislation was passed. Thank God because of this. So this is Mia. We'll get to her statement in a second because I want to get to Capricorn Clark's statement, okay? Capricorn Clark said, "Dear Judge, I testified in your courtroom in this case in May 2025. As you heard, I worked for Puff from 2004 to 2012. During that time, I got to know him very well. Since Puff fired me in 2012, he has had me blacklisted from the industry. I've had to take on multiple jobs to garner anything near my worth. Today, I'm a single mother to wow, this is so sad, to a nonverbal autistic little boy living in Los Angeles. This ordeal has taken 14 years of my life. My career trajectory halted at 33 years old." Diddy really was like a djinn. When he first got you, it seemed like it was going to be this entire gift, and it was literally a curse because all he did was take. What I lived through working for Puff, and in particular the events of December 2011, altered the course of my life and have haunted me for years. I feel that I paid with my life for the events that transpired that fateful day we had to relive in federal court. I never wanted this. For many years, I could not tell my story and lived in fear of Puff and fear of how I would feed my son. About a year and a half ago, HSI case agents found me and asked me what happened. Those agents changed my life. And I'd like to say that the Southern District of New York is the epitome of prestige and professionalism. I was handled with the ultimate care. But testifying publicly in front of Puff and his supporters was one of the hardest moments of my life. Every last word you heard from me was the truth. Yet I felt, and to be honest, I still feel like I had to fight to prove that I'm a victim, because the purpose of kidnapping me wasn't for sex trafficking. What it was for was something more serious, more sinister and grave: violence and absolute power, unchecked in the ultra rich and famous. It's insane to me that all of the things that people heard, 2 counts of prostitution of men, is the only thing that remains on the table. I wanted to speak up, tell the truth, and do the right thing when I was asked to testify. But I'm afraid that women and girls in America feel less protected than ever watching what just happened. The lesson seems to be that we should not speak up, not call law enforcement for help, and not say anything, but instead keep our head down and try to make a way regardless of what happens to us. I'm afraid this may be the only realistic way to proceed in the modern world. The last ray of light is that come through, Capricorn Clark. She ate this up. I'm motivated. The last ray of light is that you provide justice to us. You have a chance to finally help him know that he cannot just do what he wants to people. There are repercussions and consequences. He cannot just destroy other people's lives. Karma will come back a hundredfold ways. I would like Sean Combs to serve additional time in a correctional institution. I truly believe that serving more time will save his life. That's what I've been saying. As time away from his money, drugs, and power is the only punishment he will recognize. I hope Puff has a I hope Puff has a I know she didn't mean it as a threat, but to me, it's like I truly believe that will save his life. Cause time away. You safer on the inside than you are out. But she didn't mean it as a threat. But you know me. I hope Puff has a life on the other side of his time to make good on the changes he knows he has to make, to spend time with his family, and to get a chance to correct the damage he has so recklessly done to so many people who only meant well by him. Thank you, Your Honor, for your time, consideration, and for hearing us finally. God bless. Next up, who's the next person that wrote some? Oh, Deontay Nash wrote. Deontay is a key. He wrote something and it looks like Roman numeral 12 double space, but I ain't mad at you because baby, that's how I got through school. Baby, let's see what Deontay has to say. Cause you know he is a key, but Deontay is very, very intelligent too, very, very eloquent, and he was there on the inside. So let's see what Deontay has to say. She says, Dear Judge, thank you for the opportunity to share these thoughts. I write with great respect for the court and the difficult decisions it must weigh. Mr. Combs' attempt to secure release before his scheduled sentencing hearing demonstrates a troubling lack of accountability and a continued pattern of manipulation. The charges he was convicted of, including violations of the Mann Act, are not minor. They reflect seriously, deeply disturbing conduct involving the coercion and transportation of individuals for illegal sexual activity. The thought that Mr. Combs does not believe he deserves jail time is both disturbing and frightening. It underscores the depth of his lack of accountability and the danger he poses. Someone who refuses to acknowledge the harm they have caused, who believes they're above the law, demonstrates the same pattern of manipulation and abuse that has impacted so many lives. The fact that Mr. Combs believes that because he harmed people he claimed he loved or called friends, he somehow deserves leniency is outrageous. The sense of entitlement makes his actions even more sickening. Yet, Mr. Combs continues to treat this process as negotiable, as though he is merely a managing, as though he is merely managing a legal inconvenience rather than confronting the consequences of federal crimes. His efforts to preempt the court's process show not only a lack of respect for the justice system, but also a refusal to acknowledge the severity of his actions. At one point, there was a public indication that Mr. Combs intended to seek professional or mental health treatment. Whether whether that ever occurred remains unclear. What is clear, however, is that there has been no visible movement toward accountability. Rather than allow the legal process to proceed in a good faith, he is focused on tactical maneuvers meant to bypass scrutiny and maintain control, soliciting letters of support, crafting PR statements, and attempting to manipulate public sentiment. Eat it up, Deontay. His plan to escape accountability has been in motion from the very start. His violence has not been limited to private encounters. From orchestrated freak-offs to assaults on staff and strangers, his behavior has left a long trail of victims, many of whom still live in fear. Some of the worst abuse was inflicted on people he claimed he loved. This is not the story of one or two isolated incidents. This is a story of hundreds, possibly thousands of people whose lives have been scarred by his unchecked power and brutality. Mr. Combs must refrain from comparing his crimes to those of others. His conduct stands on its own and has set a new legal and cultural precedent. This is not about relative wrongdoing. This is about individual accountability for a decade long pattern of abuse. There are many reasons why Mr. Combs should serve an appropriate sentence. One, he ate this up. Psychological impact on victims. His release will re-traumatize survivors, many of whom remain in hiding for their safety. The court has a duty to uphold justice and protect those speaking out. Influence over potential co conspirators. Release would allow him to coordinate with uncharged associates to retaliate or construct false narratives. I firmly believe that. I want to say that my name is Tisa. I'm not suicidal. And if even a hair on this head, or like my haters like to say, if even a hair on this wig, right, gets harmed, you better, I want y'all to flood the prosecutor's office. I want justice for Tisa. Anyway, right? No remorse or accountability. To date, he has shown no genuine remorse, only carefully crafted statements issued under legal pressure. This lack of accountability should weigh heavily against the request for release. And he cites public safety concerns. The allegations include nonviolence, physical abuse, death threats, and intimidation. His release would endanger survivors and the public at large. He said, beyond my legal concerns, I want the court to understand the very real lived impact of Diddy's abuse. This man harassed everyone around us, including friends and business associates, so relentlessly that people no longer wanted to work with us or even spend time with us. We were ashamed to leave the house. The balcony he hung banner from, a place that once offered peace, became a site of terror. The home he held me in against my will was my own. The keys and phone he stole were possessions I earned through years of hard work. He robbed me not only of safety, but of dignity. His reach was suffocating. He has caused lasting damage to the lives and careers of nearly everyone in his inner circle, past, present, and likely future. Some complied willingly. Many more felt coerced. He taunted victims through songs that contradicted the truth, creating false narratives that could never safely be challenged because the fear he instilled. He pursued Cassie through her friends, despite both of us telling him she wanted no contact, and tried to manipulate situations by offering favors if I helped deliver her to him. He has openly declared to his victims that he does not respect or care about the legal system. He does not respect the court. The court should not extend him any leniency. I do this not just for myself, but for every mother, father, child, grandparent, sister, brother, boyfriend, husband, wife, friend, artist, intern, employee, and assistant who sacrificed for a man who only abused them in return. I've watched people take trains, move across country, leave their families, and dedicate themselves fully, only to be mistreated, exploited, and silenced. Some of these same people have even left the entertainment industry entirely because of his actions. This issue is not only about violence, but also secrecy. Many of us were abused precisely because Mr. Combs wanted us to hold his secrets to maintain his reputation. The truth is, Mr. Combs never respected those who worked closest with him. He rummaged through our lives while publicly pretending to suffer through hard times. He refuses to take responsibility privately or publicly. The abuse was deliberate, the control was relentless, the damage was lasting. The same ailments Mr. Combe now claims as an excuse are the very ones he has carried with him throughout his years of touring, conducting business, and abusing those around him. They never stopped him from being violent, abusive, or intoxicated when left to his own devices. They should not serve as an excuse now. True change cannot exist without acknowledging the harm one has caused. Claiming to have changed while continuing to defend the very behavior that led to the incarceration, that's not accountability, it's avoidance. Mr. Combs repeatedly shifts between denying responsibility, seeking sympathy, and reshaping a narrative to suit his immediate needs. The real transformation and consistent, honest, and uncomfortable. It does not depend on who is watching or what outcome is desired. Until he confronts his actions as wrong and takes full responsibility, any claim of change is hollow. I do not expect him to be in jail forever, but I am praying for a sentence that allows the victims to heal and encourages Mr. Combs for genuine change. For all these reasons, I respectfully urge the court to deny his request for early release and to deny his 14-month suggestion. He has been fighting the truth for the past year, and this ongoing denial is causing additional harm to the mental well being of the victims. Survivors deserve safety. The public deserves protection, and justice demands accountability. Judge, this is not a good man. Thank you so much for your time, Judge Aaron. Your consideration means a great deal to me and to the victims. Respectfully, Deontay Nash. Judge, this is not a good man. I'm still laughing that Young Miami's dizzy self literally did all this stuff. Who else wrote this? Oh, this is Chef Jordan. Let's read Chef Jordan's, okay? And then let's read Chef Jordan's. One second. Okay. Chef Jordan said, to whom it may concern, this is Chef Jordan. She didn't testify at the last minute. I really think that was a big mistake of the prosecution, but let's get into it. My name is Jordan Chatan Atkinson. Chaton Atkinson. And I was Sean Combs' personal chef for the summer of 2007 through 2010. During my time, I can say I was extremely overworked, underpaid, mentally abused, exploited, and at one point, I was insulted by Sean Combs. Not only was I exploited by Sean Combs, I was also exploited by his HR executive staff. Throughout my time there, they would constantly manipulate me into silence and staying in my position by saying they would get help to ensure I had days off. There was also a time in which they told me to spearhead the creation of Ciroc flavors. I was the one who chose, sampled, and tweaked the flavors throughout their inception. She was responsible for Ciroc coconut. I don't drink anymore, but when I used to dabble, I mean, I was never a big drinker, but when I would dabble, I used to love, I'm not promoting Ciroc, but coconut vodka and pineapple juice, elite. Anyway, right? But stop drinking because drinking causes cancer. But do what you want, okay? Um, hold on really quick. There is a hold on. By saying, okay. Mm-mm-mm. I was the one who sampled, tweaked the flavors throughout the inception, for which I was never compensated for. This is the most toxic and abusive workplace environment I've ever been in my entire career. It has been extremely traumatizing to relive all this. It's hard to live through the first time around in my mid 20s. Now in my mid 40s, a lot of things I was too young and naive to understand. But the reality of it all is cemented in my mind now. I spent the past year and a half in a constant fight state or flight mode, and I'm currently trying to heal and repair all the damage. There was also a time in which Sean Combs threatened my life to keep me silent about his abuse towards Cassie. I have a journal from this time that I never read until Cassie's case came out in November. It was like opening a Pandora's box, reading what my 20-year-old self endured. I was there to witness the start of Diddy and Cassie's relationship. This has been an extremely traumatizing time in my life the past year and a half. Having to unearth the past and relive it again. I never forgot what I experienced during my time there, but I for sure buried it in order to survive. Why didn't they put her on the stand? I spent the past 18 years building my career in a high profile sector, and this case has destroyed the life I worked so hard to create. When you become a personal staff to a high profile person, you become part of a secret society. Discretion is the foundation. I didn't willingly participate in this case. What I recognize now, this is what happens with collective silence. My silence gave Sean Combs the space and time to grow into a more violent criminal. When I started working with him, he and Cassie were in the grooming phase. This was what that was in my eyes. She was 19, he was 36. He's disgusting. There were lavish dinners, shopping sprees, etc., all in the guise of creating a new artist. Sean was working her down, like men with money do. I was there in Miami when their working relationship turned romantic. During that weekend, I saw Cassie provided copious amounts of rugs. I encountered her extremely high out of her mind, and I offered her food to help bring her down. I witnessed Sean cursing his assistant, David James, out for not having condoms on the yacht. I remember thinking it was crazy and gross. Like, why is he so mad about condoms not being on the yacht? It's never that serious. It stuck on my mind because that's when I knew this was no longer a working relationship. They were both extremely high the whole weekend. And really thereafter, I saw Sean abuse prescription meds, weed, ecstasy. Throughout these early months, it was heavy drug use. I saw him being extremely controlling. I would say there was an obsessive nature about them. He would go on drug binges and he wouldn't let any of us sleep, let alone get any breaks. I was working 17 to 21 hours a day, 7 days a week. I worked almost 2.5 to 3 months straight until I had my first day off. He screamed and cursed at me when he saw me having a casual conversation with Cassie. He said I wasn't supposed to be talking to her if it wasn't about food. He also cursed me out when he saw me speaking to guests at one of his parties. He was watching me from across the room. He then pulled me aside and said that I wasn't supposed to be talking to his friends, that he didn't work all these years for me to come and steal his relationships. Sean Carter would curse me out if I fed people without his permission. He made me feel like I had to look at the floor and not make eye contact with guests. I'd say like a pimp does that to his woman. Again, I think this is how Diddy was always so powerful. He stole the labor and thoughts of the people around him and made them thank him for doing it. During this time in November 2007, while in the Miami estate, I witnessed Sean get aggressive and borderline violent with the estate manager, Amanda. He was enraged by the fact that Amanda was allowing her house staff to eat. When Sean questioned her about it, she lied and said she never told me to feed them. Amanda and I actually got into a disagreement about me feeding the staff because I told her I wasn't being paid to do that. I actually called HR to get clarity. They informed me that I was supposed to feed them. One day, Sean observed the groundskeeper making themselves a plate. Even though I said they shouldn't, because he hadn't even eaten himself. Of course, they were making their plates. Of course, as they were making his plates, he comes downstairs. Once he sees this, he immediately starts screaming and cursing about who told them they could eat. I stood there silent. I didn't want to get anyone in trouble, and I could tell he was furious. Ultimately, he called security and told him that Amanda told me I was supposed to feed them. He then called both Amanda and I into the kitchen. He started screaming and cursing at Amanda, saying, "Why is she lying? Why is she telling me to feed her staff?" Ultimately, as he was screaming, he gets up and throws a water bottle across the room, saying, "I'm a MFing king, and you are lying to my MFing face right now." Amanda was saying she told me to only provide leftovers to her staff. I told her to just tell the truth. Once he threw that water bottle, I got up and called Dia in HR. I used the phone where he couldn't see. I asked Dia, what should I do because I thought he might hit Amanda. I was instructed to get security to separate them, which I did, all while leaving the phone down on the ledge so Dia could hear everything. Amanda resigned not long after that incident. I believe it fractured their working relationship. Amanda and I never recovered, and she blamed me for the incident. Soon after this trip, my hair started falling off out, and I was only having anxiety attacks with heart palpitations. Sorry. I asked HR if they could rush my benefits through because I needed to see a doctor. I was diagnosed with stress induced apalachia and extreme anxiety attacks. I was prescribed Zoloft. Excuse me. Throughout this time, I was constantly calling the office, asking for help and begging for days off. When you work 17 to 21 hours a day, you never really rest because your body and your mind are still racing when you lay down, and by that time, you have to get up for the next day. HR kept stringing me along saying they would get me help so I could have a few days off. I was young and I wanted to prove I could do it, so I stayed, thinking that some things could change, but they never did. In April 2008, at his Alpine, New Jersey estate, Sean Combs physically assaulted me. We got into a heated argument and I quit, which enraged him. He kept saying I couldn't effing quit on him. As I was walking out the house, he was following me, screaming, cursing, and berating me. Once the door was open, he used all his might to push me out the door. I went flying into the air and ended up on my elbows and butt. There were 2 steps to get up into the house, so it was a pretty hard fall. I called the police but hung up. I called HR and told them I was going to sue him. Ultimately, HR told me that I would be blackballed and my career would be over if I sued him. They said that Sean had the power to blackball me and would end my career when it just started. I chose my career and I stayed quiet. I left for a few months, but was asked to come back. I was assured this would never happen again, that Sean Carter would apologize and that they would would help find I'm sorry, they would find me help so that I could get days off. HR said they would look at budgets on a pay increase. At the time, I was only making 65K. I wasn't working after I left. So when they called, I went back. He apologized, but none of the other things they promised ever happened. In 2008, 2009, this is blacked out. Genevieve called the office. I went to the kitchen phone to call 911. I was told to hang up and that they would send his private doctors over. I was told to leave. This incident was minimized. HR said that Sean Carter had a reaction to his prescription meds and alcohol. I told HR I knew what I think this is OD, but I knew what, let's just put a word in there, OD. I knew what an OD was, even though we don't know if it was OD. But I left it alone. Sean Carter had some of his prescriptions added to my prescription pickups a few times in Miami. Both of these incidents were examples of how I assume rich people do things. So the public doesn't find out their personal business, not understanding that some of this was illegal. Why didn't they get her to testify in 2009? I think that's how they lost the case. They should have gotten more people to testify. In 2009 in LA, I was informed by uh, Diddy's security bonds that Diddy brutally beat Cassie and that Roger Bonds thought he was going to kill Cassie. Why didn't they call Roger Bonds to testify? I was shocked as Bonds detailed the beating. He said that Sean was punching her in the head and stomping her out inside a car. At one point, Cassie ran from the car and was dragged back by Sean through the concrete into the car. Genevieve, his assistant, was in the car and she was trying to break it up. Bonds was concerned about Genevieve and said she was hyperventilating. Roger Bonds asked me to check on Genevieve. When I went to check on Jen, she acted like she didn't know what I was talking about. So I left it alone and went back to the post. Yeah. Somebody said I love how Capricorn used her letter to testify. I love how Jordan's using her letter to testify. She said, "Oh, so I left it alone. And when I went back to post in the kitchen, Sean Combs came screaming and cursing into the kitchen. Chef, um, why are you in my MF and business? What goes on in my relationship is my MF and business. I will effing end you if you tell anyone." I took this as he would blank me. You better not tell anyone in the office either, which made me realize HR told him that I called them about the incident in Miami with Amanda. Up to that point, I didn't know that HR told him about me reporting the Miami incident. I believed then that Sean would kill me if I told anyone he was beating Cassie. So I remained quiet. A day or two later, his assistant Genevieve and I took a bag to Cassie at the London hotel. I saw bruises on her face and arms. We never discussed it. We acted like nothing happened. Over the course of my time working with Sean, I saw hotel rooms to be set up with lights, sheets, baby oil, and Astroglide. I had also assumed it was freaky things going on, but never knew the extent. I dare not ask either. I saw Sean yell, scream, berate artists, employees, girlfriends. He was always mentally and physically abusive. I saw Cassie bruised on two other occasions in Miami and LA, but never questioned it. Sean weaponized food, sleep, breaks. We're not allowed breaks. We often snuck in to eat. I would sneak food to feed the staff. I would get cursed out if I asked to go home for a day. I wasn't allowed to leave for a day unless he said I could. As I type this, my heart breaks for the younger version of myself. Because she was Cassie's age when all this was happening. She was 20, Cassie was 19. I saw Sean Combs create drug fueled environments for artists, executives, and his girlfriends. I saw the aftermath of sex binges in New Jersey, New York City, Miami, LA, and the Hamptons. I believe that the heavy drug use was coercion in order for him to get his way with his participants. He was using drugs with Cassie on day one of their consumption. I'm not sure you could ever be a willing participant under those circumstances. The drug use was far beyond recreational. Sean Combs was also having a sexual relationship with Blank, which to me was an added layer of control, someone in her innermost circle keeping tabs on her and was keeping secrets from her, weaponizing her most coveted friendships. I'm not sure Cassie ever knew about this betrayal. Oh my God, who is that? Over the years, I witnessed all of his assistants break down, and they each started abusing drugs and alcohol in order to get through the workday. David started using drugs, blah, blah, blah. Genevieve, I'm not sure, but after the 2009 beating in LA, something happened and she left not long after. I would binge drink when I was told I was off and smoke weed to calm my nerves. My therapist said I was self medicating with the weed. On March, oh wow, she is going in. Hold on. On Ah, on March 20th, 2004, the feds showed up at my door in Atlanta, Georgia. I was terrified and I refused to speak to them without a lawyer present. I was served with a grand jury subpoena before they left my home. By April 4th, Sean Combs knew I was contacted by the feds. Wow. From March 20th to April 4th, even though I had not testified yet, this terrified me. By April 11th, Sean Combs' lawyer, Aaron Dreyer, left a voicemail stating that they knew I was contacted by law enforcement and that Sean Combs wanted to offer to cover my legal fees. I did not respond immediately. I'm sorry, I did not respond. Immediately, I called my lawyers. They instructed me to disregard it. They said they would send out a cease and desist. On April 15th, Aaron texted me about the voicemail and stated in text that they knew I was contacted and reiterated that Sean Combs wanted to cover my legal fees. I was terrified because how did Sean Combs even know I was contacted? Now I didn't trust him or the government, which was probably his goal to undermine trust in the government. I didn't know what was going on. I felt like my life was in danger. On April 17th, 18th, my Cadillac was broken into. My alarm system was tripped up. All of my personal identifying paperwork in my glove compartment was taken out and neatly stacked on my passenger seat. All the contents of the middle console, which had a knife and jewelry, which were also laid out. The only thing stolen was my dog bag. My dog was like my child. I took this as a witness tampering and intimidation. In my mind, this was a clear threat. I called the police and filed a police report. I stated the feds were at my house 2 weeks prior, that I believed that this was intimidation because the person at the center of the case didn't want me talking. I don't have proof that this was Sean Combs doing, but I firmly believe that it was him. He was sending me a message letting me know how easy it was to touch me if he wanted. By this time, I was being asked for months to be a part of a documentary about Sean Combs, and I kept declining. I decided after Sean Combs made contact with me through his lawyers that I would do the documentary as a form of protection for myself in case anything more happened to me. I wanted it on record that he assaulted me and that I knew of the brutal 2009 assault of Cassie, which was detailed in page 14 of a lawsuit against him. Sean Combs never denied that 2009 assault. He just threatened to end me if to keep me silent. I took that as he would kill me. I accepted that he might have murked me for my participation in the documentary. Even now, I believe that he could have me murked. Again, if you guys are just joining us, this is testimony from Chef Jordan. For some reason, the government didn't call her, but she would have been such a powerful witness, and she probably would have swayed the jury. Probably would have swayed the jury. After the 2016 brutal beating of Cassie was released, this is her letter to the judge, Judge Aaron. After the 2006 brutal beating of Cassie was released, I realized that our collective silence only emboldened Sean Combs. He didn't get help. He didn't stop. He just got worse. The fact of the matter is, Sean Combs is an abusive maniac. He doesn't just physically, mentally, and financially abuse and exploit his girlfriends. He does this to his staff as well. He has spent decades abusing almost everyone around him, unchecked. So many of us just wanted to create our dream careers, and Sean Cold had us living in a nightmare. Reliving this all has been extremely traumatic. Seeing him essentially get off the most serious offenses is terrifying. This was a miscarriage of justice, in my opinion. For him to now say upon his release he wants to become a DV counselor is truly sick. Him and his legal team should be ashamed of themselves. I second that. This PR media tour his legal team is taking just further proves how much Sean Combs believes himself to be above the law, and he has no remorse for the horror that he has caused any of us. Something's redacted, but she ends up with saying, Cassie said he raped her. Mia said he raped her. I believe he is a serial rapist. We're supposed to testify, but we were ultimately removed at the last minute. So somebody else was removed from the witness list too. Damn. Sean Combs liked to weaponize fatherhood, his children, and Kim Porter. And Kim Porter's friends are co-signing. When in reality, he blankety blank blank. Where were his kids while he was being a menace to society all these years? Sean Combs is a billionaire, not a street level pimp. He chose to use drugs to coerce women into becoming his own personal sex slave. He used those recorded sexual escapades to hold their heads to keep them in check, to hold over their heads to keep them in check. He used his staff to get drugs, to facilitate, to cover up crimes. He kidnapped Capricorn Clark at gunpoint. He was going to kill Kid Cudi. These things really happen. It's sick how it's all been minimized. Nothing about what any of us adored is normal. The RICO was there the whole time. Sean Combs got away with it. Instead of being satisfied that he essentially got off, he chooses to let his ego keep driving him. Instead of being thankful, he and his team have decided to make a mockery out of all his victims in the judicial system. It is for these reasons I believe Sean Combs should get a maximum sentence available. I don't believe he can ever be rehabilitated. He is a master manipulator. I don't think he should be allowed to live in New York City, New Jersey, LA, or Miami. Eat it up. Eat it up, Chef Jordan. He should have to relocate to the middle of nowhere, far away from the places he preyed on and harmed so many people. Not only do I fear for my safety, I fear for all witnesses that participated in this case. I know Sean Combs to be a very dangerous and spiteful man with a long memory and a panache for payback. Thank you for your time and consideration. Sincerely, Jordan Chatan, Sean Atkinson. Excuse me, I'm not pronouncing her middle name right. Is it Sean? Sean Atkinson, Jordan Sean Atkinson. I think that's what it says. Yeah, you guys, listen, what more needs to possibly be? Oh my God, Will Wallace, thank you for gifting 20 memberships. You guys, thank you so much. Let's get into who's sending me. Let me get into this. Lindsay ID, thank you for the super chat. Said he needs life under he does, but noun. Hold on, let me put myself on the big screen. Hold on. Can you guys hear me? He needs to be put under, but noun that all these lies they were spreading about what was said, what wasn't said, that's a lie. And now that we see it all happen, now that you see the evidence that the jury was hearing, it's so weird to me even now that people are still trying to say that the jury, that Diddy was innocent and that the jury didn't get it wrong. Do you see what I'm saying? The whole point of the matter is, let me just get through this, but now do y'all see now? Diddy needs to be under the gel. Brandon Tony, thank you for being number 3. Woo! And also, Shell Effects. Exactly. Will Wallace, thank you for gifting those memberships. Valentine TV, Valentine, how are you, darling? Said, hey, T said, my Title 12 family hopes he gets 10 years plus love. I hope this is a case for precedence that lets people know that abusing people, sexually doing all that stuff, it will not be tolerated and that it is an actual crime. Also, thank you. Trishawn, what's up, Trishawn? Said, except to see Gene Deal back on Art of Dialogue soon. I can't wait. You know, I love me some Uncle Gene. You know I do. Even though he always look at me like I'm his annoying little sister. Anyway, Miss Sandra ATL said, FY, Sean Combs addressing some previous misquotes, saying Sean Carter. Thank you, Miss Sandra ATL. If I said Sean Carter, I apologize, you guys. No disrespect to Sean Carter, all disrespect to Diddy. Okay. Yes. Excuse me if I use Beyonce's husband's name in vain. I did not mean to. I hope that you guys get what I was getting about. In any case, yeah, in any case, hold on, y'all. Where are we at? In any case, here we are. Here we are. Y'all, listen, I'm going to speak it into existence. I know I didn't count on the ignorance and, in my opinion, misogyny of the jury, and I thought all people were on the same page about putting abusers away. But I am going to say this: I don't think Diddy's getting 14 months. I don't think Diddy's getting 2 years. I think Diddy is getting a minimum 5 years. After all these letters and the prosecution, there's a good chance Diddy actually might get 10 years, which is 4 or 5 years for each count. A big record. Now, he might get time served that knocks it down to maybe he'll get 9 years in time served that knocks it down to 7 years and 3 months. I don't know, but I listen, let me just say this. I'm going to be there for the verdict. I'm going to be there, of course, live streaming. I'm going to tell you guys everything I saw, knew, heard, right? And we are going to get justice for victims because I don't care what anybody thinks. Like Judge Aaron said, and I hope he does us proud. Domestic violence is still violence. And you know what this reminds me of? This is the last thing I'm going to say before I go. There's a case right now with some wealthy financer in Southern District in New York, right? And for all the way, why are you only going after black men? Well, he's white, and I'm about to start covering the case. He got arrested for Diddy-like crimes too. Only he would call the prostitutes in, and they would go into this dungeon, and he would electrocute them, and his assistant helped coordinate, and he would electrocute them. And the only reason why people are even taking it seriously is because they were random. They're taking it seriously because they were random prostitutes, right? Nothing wrong if you're a sex worker. I'm not even trying to shame that. But they were random prostitutes. And because of that, people are already taking it more seriously. But the crazy thing is, we saw Diddy and everything he did to Cassie and everything he did to Jane. And the reason why they let him off is because they were in a relationship. It's crazy in America how saying the word love and a relationship can be thrown out, and all of a sudden people just feel free to close the door because they're like, oh, what happens in a man's home isn't my business. Hell yeah, it's my business. If I hear people screaming in pain in your door, it's 100% my business. Am I my brother's keeper? Yes, I am when it comes to stuff like that. Anyway, you guys, listen, I'll chop up the letters into something more digestible for you guys. In the meantime, what am I saying? I'll maybe see you guys later. Definitely see you guys tomorrow. Definitely see you guys Thursday. And tune in because we are going live from the Diddy trial. The gang's back in town. We are going live from the Diddy's trial. But I will say this. After reading all these letters, after seeing the prosecution's response, after seeing the silence on Diddy's teams, all I got to say is things are looking up. Things are looking up. It looks like we might get some justice. Anyway, you guys, let me know what you think in the comments. I'll talk to y'all later. Bye. Okay, I'm ending the stream now. Now for real. Bye.